Right.
Watch
So,
place.
because it would be missing.
Okay, good evening. I'm called the regular council meeting for Tuesday, May 20th, 2025. The order is 6 o'clock. Ms. Monroe, if you'd like to call the roll.
Mayor Don Barnard.
Here.
Tiffany Hollis.
Here.
Ryan Green. Dave Seelan.
Here.
Jeff Barr.
Accounted for.
Wes Coble.
Here.
Bob Orsini.
Here.
I make a motion that we move to executive session to discuss pending court action to include all of city council and city manager and our attorney who will be joining us by video or phone. Okay.
Second.
Mayor Barnard.
Yes.
Wes Coble.
Yes.
Jeff Barr.
Yes.
Bob Orsini.
Yes.
Dave Seelan.
Yes.
Tiffany Hollis.
Yes.
Okay. We'll leave Returning from executive session.
To say,
They've been getting.
we want to tax you 1 mil for 5 years so we can do this to you.
We're going to,
Don't put a cent.
if we could please stand for the invocation given by Councilman Coble, and then remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. Thank you for your many blessings upon us and our community. Please be over us for guidance, wisdom, and strength in the coming days and weeks. Please be with those that'll be traveling over the next couple weeks here with the holiday, what this great country offers all of its citizens. This we ask in your name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, guys, and welcome tonight. Our first item on the agenda tonight, or the next item on the agenda, is the action on minutes from May 7th, 2025. Mr. Green and Mr. Barr were not here for those minutes. Does anyone else have any changes or additions or anything they would like to make to these minutes? Hearing none, what is the will of council on this?
Motion to approve is written.
Second that.
Bob Orsini,
Yes.
Dave Seeland,
Yes.
Ryan Green,
I'll abstain.
Tiffany Hollis,
Yes.
Mayor Barnard,
Yes.
Wes Coble,
Yes.
Jeff Barr.
I also abstain.
Ms. Monroe, do you have any notes from anybody who'd like to speak tonight?
I did not receive any speaker slip.
Would anybody here would like to speak tonight? No? Okay, we're moving right along. We have a presentation from EMH&T on the facility plan overview. So we welcome them tonight to this presentation.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
quick introduction, and then I'm going to pass the baton over to you. All right, we'll be a little formal here. Good evening, members of council. First, we'd like to introduce our guest, Mike Keller. You've all met Mike Keller. Justin Holder. You may have not formally met Justin, just in passing, I believe, at the last meeting. And then our legal counsel, Steve Samuels, is here tonight. So as you are aware, in 2024, the city engaged EMH&T to draft a facility master plan, which was submitted to the Ohio EPA on May 1st. Tonight, this will be a high-level overview of this draft facility plan. We will try to keep the presentation roughly to 30 minutes. If there will be an opportunity to ask questions. However, we encourage you to take notes and write down any questions you may have. If time does not permit, we will certainly reach out individually, or we can facilitate another meeting to follow up and answer those questions if need be. So, as I mentioned, Steve Samuels, our environmental attorney, here is in attendance tonight to help guide and answer any questions relative to the process and the work that's being done from his perspective of it. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Mike and Justin, and take it away.
Thank you, members of council. Thank you, Sean, for the introduction. We presented previously, kind of giving kind of some previous information about the facility plan and what we were working on. With this submittal, we want to just give council kind of a quick overview of the draft facility plan that was submitted to the EPA. There was a subsequent letter submitted to the EPA from the mayors of the coalition members on May 15th. And really just kind of walk through how it was developed and what's included in the plan and why it was put together. This plan kind of builds upon the comprehensive plans that have been adopted by the various communities and the framework that was done with Licking County to really provide the member communities of the coalition, Johnstown, Alexandria, and Granville, able to present an alternate 208 plan. What that is a wastewater, water quality planning, and allows you to have some authority over development and growth in your designated area. So we'll go through this in the presentation a little bit, but in 2024, the EPA started updating their 208 plans, which is looking at the regional watersheds for water quality and who has the right to service within those bounds. For the coalition, the city and the overall group's desire was to make sure we expanded our authority to kind of control the growth in and adjacent to the jurisdictions. So that was important to kind of be able to build upon the comprehensive plans that were established. To that end, I think the coalition has identified that, with the growth and economic development, it's very essential for the region, but that long-term growth can only be achieved if it was planful, economically viable, and incorporates the residents' desires. And one of those keys is not just the utility portion of it, which is what we're focusing on tonight, is the wastewater component. That's what's encompassed in the facility plan, is the wastewater service. But in addition to, as we're looking at this plan and the impacts to coalition, it's the community growth that is more than just selling the utilities. It's the social contract that includes utilities, streets, paths, stormwater management, green space. There's a lot of other things that your comprehensive plan addresses, and this is one of the tools that helps the coalition or Johnstown maintain and guide that growth in the city. So what we have up here on the slide are some of the items that we're going to cover. What is the facility plan? Some of the practical impacts of the plan. What information did we pull into it to create it? And then the principles, goals, and development plan. What the cost to, if you're expanding your service area and doing growth, what are the anticipated costs over a planning horizon? And then kind of comparing the coalition plans to the Licking Regional Water District plan, which overlaps with this area. Again, what we wanted to be able to do with this plan is present to the EPA an alternate that gives the coalition power to kind of control their growth in the planning area. So, Justin, you kind of want to go through some of the basic terms?
Absolutely. So I'll cover most of the technical side of how the plan was developed and what it means. So to kind of set the stage here, I want you to understand some key terms for what we're going to be discussing for the rest of the slides. So first we have what is called the area-wide waste treatment management plan. It's usually more referred to as the 208 plan. And what that is the comprehensive plan for wastewater management in Ohio. So for Licking County specifically, the state of Ohio and the OEPA are the area-wide agencies that are in charge of the 208 plan. There are sometimes you have more regional agencies up north that take care of their certain region, but for Licking County, it is the state. So the next level down, under that 2A plan, you have the designated management authorities. We refer to these as DMAs typically. So DMA is responsible for the wastewater planning and service at the local level. That's going to inform what goes into the comprehensive 208 plan. So this falls into the responsibility of either a municipality, a county commissioners, or in some rare cases, the utility district, which can also be referred to as a 6119 district or 6119. You might hear that term in other places.
Which is what Southwest, or Licking Regional?
Yes, Licking Regional. And so in that, those DMAs will provide that facility planning that will evaluate the feasibility for those service areas in certain timeframes. So you might be wondering, why does this matter? What does this mean for us? So what that is, the coalition's facility plan, what it does is demonstrates the feasibility and the rationale of revising the jurisdictional boundaries and the wastewater when it comes to planning efforts and the actual service of that. And so that's going to allow, with this jurisdictional change for the boundaries, it's going to allow you to control your destiny when it comes to growth for economy, development, schools, infrastructure, community values, and the quality of life. So next one.
Quick question on that. The 208 line that you guys are discussing here, who can change that?
OEPA.
State.
The state.
So the 208 line right now, the state is the one who changes it, it's not up to the county commissioners, it's not up to Johnstown, it is up to the state EPA or the state to change it.
Yes, the facility plan, you demonstrate, why it should be changed, why it makes sense in 208, or who manages the 208, which in this case is State of Ohio, OPA.
Thank you.
To make that determination.
And that's why it was important for us to get this submitted to the EPA to give an alternate to what's already on the books as the current 208 plans for the region, for Western Licking County. Again, being able to show a feasible alternative to what was on the books that met your needs.
So I'm giving a little bit of brief history. I'm going to expedite this a little bit since we kind of touched on some of the background here already. So up until 2023, there really hasn't been any need for any like formalized facility planning in the region. The municipalities of Johnstown, Alexandria, and Granville have taken care of their wastewater facilities, owning and operating those facilities within their corporate boundaries. And then outside that, in the county, the county commissioners has been the responsible entity for permitting and monitoring the private sewers that are in that area. So fast forward to 2023, with the announcement of Intel and the other major developments, OEPA calls for a comprehensive update to the 208 plan, which hadn't been previously updated since around 2005, 2006. And so they called for that with the intent to have input from local jurisdictions, local wastewater treatment plant owners of what that, to inform them what that change, if any, should look like. And so with that, in 2024, the Utility Coalition, Municipal Utility Coalition of Licking County, Coalition as it's known, was formed, and that's a direct response to the OEPA call for that participation. Also in 2024, the Licking Regional Water District submitted their facility plan for their new Moots Run plant that goes along the 161 corridor, or serves that area. So then the coalition members, recognizing the inherent problems, risks, and the potential cost for quality of life in the region, they hired HNT to assess feasibility of an alternate facility plan, as Mike mentioned. So now we fast forward to present day, and with that, I'll pass it briefly on to Mike for the next couple slides.
Okay, well, this kind of cuts to the chase. I don't know if I need to stand by the microphone, if I can move around. The blue line is what we've identified as the facility planning area, which is the area that we're looking for the coalition to have that responsibility to control the wastewater, water quality discharges in that region. So what you see is generally controls Monroe Township, St. Albans, Granville, and a little bit of the northern part of Jersey Township. When we looked at establishing those, we looked at school districts, we looked at topography. There's a lot of things that we looked at what naturally would fall into growth. But I think one of the key things with Johnstown is working closely with the school district and making sure that as growth does occur, that those are aligned. Also with the roadway infrastructure, trying to think through how that traffic will impact the residents. There's a lot of other outside the water, the wastewater utilities that benefit. So we've identified through coordination with the members of the coalition that the planned service boundary is that blue outer line. Within that blue outer line, we've identified 3 designated management agencies. So where the orange will generally be led and controlled by Johnstown, the green will be Alexandria, and then the blue, Granville. Understanding that as we start hitting the end of our planning horizon, which is 20 years, that there will be more integration between those facilities because of, as development comes, where additional capacity can be brought on for that wastewater treatment facility, and then also just monitoring the overall water quality within the Raccoon Creek. So within the assessment of the 208, our facility plan, some of the things that we bring into it is the topography. What's the natural drainage? Where does things naturally want to go? How do things connect? What watershed boundaries? We're going to talk about land use, how we took those land uses that are projected and we did a planning horizon, a 5, 10, and 20-year growth horizon. So we're going to talk about how we build those out and what the results of those numbers were. Those growth projections are converted into flow, wastewater flow. Once we know what flow we can anticipate on those horizons, now we start looking at the facilities. Be it the treatment plants, what's the capacity, how can we service it? Again, the beauty with what we're setting up with the coalition, it's an inside-out approach, expanding existing facilities. So you're growing around the existing cores, and you're using that existing capacity that's already in place to kind of grow and then expand as the development comes online. So you're not trying to do anything radical. You're trying to align it with the growth opportunities that are in front of us. We'll discuss a little bit about the technical and economic feasibility, what the costs are, And then at the end of this presentation, we'll kind of do a comparison between what the coalition's plan is for this area and then what was submitted by Licking Regional Water. So first and foremost, when we start, we're engineers, so when we start this stuff, we're gonna look at the most basic, where does the water want to drain? So natural topography and the Raccoon Creek watershed is what runs right through Johnstown, Alexandria, and Granville. If you look really close and squint, you're gonna see little stars. Those are the existing treatment facilities. Well, the blue are the water and the green are the wastewater. So where there are existing facilities, where there are existing capacity, where growth's gonna occur. So looking at that, that also provides us some ability to look at how we can connect regionally by gravity. So we can reduce the cost, reduce the long-term operation cost if we start looking at the natural drainage and how things want to connect. The other thing when we look at this, and one of the considerations we have is the regional approach of right now, we've got 3 separate treatment facilities, we've got 3 separate communities, but as you grow, it's how can we start sharing resources, how do you grow and utilize this capacity. Initially, we're going to demonstrate or show, Alexandria and Granville, they're already sharing water, that the wastewater service between those 2 communities will allow growth in St. Albans Township. We're fortunate up in Johnstown with the existing plant, being able to expand it up from the 1.2 to the 2.4 MGD, then ultimately up to 4.8. So we can continue to expand our existing facility to kind of control that near-term growth. When I say near-term, really that 5, 10 years, almost out to 15 years from what the planning is. Anything else on this slide, Justin, or did I cover it? Okay. Next slide. Land use.
So I'll talk a little bit more about the land use and the growth projections and kind of understanding what's going to go into that, or what went into that, I should say. So talking a little more of the key terms and the hierarchy of that, we have the facility planning area. So what's important for this is that the facility planning, or FPA, is going to correspond to that designated management authority, the DMA that we talked about earlier, corresponds directly. What you need to know is that this is a planning area. It is not a service area. So in practice, it's a jurisdictional boundary, again, not a service area. But within that FPA, within that planning area, we do have service areas, those projected service areas. So those areas are where utility service is projected to occur in a specified, like I said, period of time, which is very important. So in our plan, we project 5, 10, 20 years, 20-year horizons that the coalition is going to be able to serve as a function of the future land use, or is able to. So next we have the probable maximum land use. And so this is the future land use that we're calling throughout the plan. This term refers to the highest development density and type that is likely to be realized, and it is guided directly, as Mike mentioned, by the community comprehensive plans. So I will note, it's important to understand that the actual development intensity may not reach these estimates in those defined 5, 10, 20-year horizons. However, we use this probable maximum land use as the condition for which the facility plan is evaluated in order to ensure that plan plan infrastructure is able to support the needed uses as they arise.
It's a little conservative as we look at it. When we go look at the 5-year, we assume that area that we bring up, and we'll flip through it here in a second, is fully developed based off of what the comp plan said. Then we went through and looked at the individual comprehensive plans. We looked at the framework, and we also looked at the MORPC growth projections to try to figure out how much would come online in a given duration. So, and I think the next slides kind of show how that land use comes together.
Yeah, I promise that was pretty much the last of the definitions that we'll have to cover. So, as we mentioned, it's sourced from the community level planning efforts. That's the primary focus of the facility plan. That's the guiding principle.
Oh, I jumped ahead.
You did a little bit. It's okay. It's repetitive. So looking at here, we have examples of our, the Johnstown future land use maps from their comprehensive plan, the Monroe comprehensive plan as well, Jersey Township future land use map, the St. Albans and Alexandria future land use, and Granville, Village of Granville, and the township. And so, again, this is the basis for how the utility demands are projected as a reflection of those growth patterns. And so what this is going to yield is a diverse system of uses. And this is I guess the result of what all those comprehensive plans come together and what the result is within the coalition facility planning area. And so, again, so tying those utility demands and capacities to the comp plans is one of the best mechanisms that you can bring life to the comprehensive plans that have been, seen by the public, vetted at nauseum, and are going to be consistent with your community vision and values. So if you're visual like me, it helps to see kind of what this looks like on a map. And so here we have, the existing service areas, what we know as it is today, where wastewater is covered. You see in the green, you have Johnstown, Alexandria, and Granville going to the corporate boundaries. And then expand out to the 5-year horizon for all three, to the 10, expanding even further. And then finally, we get to the 20-year 20-year service area that is contiguous, if it will go. And so again, while these areas are by no means exact to the parcel level, it does give us a relatively conservative estimate for that future land use within these service areas to understand and plan for what infrastructure is needed, so we can figure out how much it costs and plan appropriately overall. And so this is going to be the same information, but what it means by a little bit more of that number. So I'll go through this a little quickly. I do recommend looking at this afterwards of the detail, what the numbers say. So what you're going to see here is, again, that progression of what we know today, and then we apply future land uses within that exact same area. That's that green that you saw on the previous slide, and then expand to that 5, 10, and then 20-year horizons. Catch up to me. And so again, these are the wastewater demands that are projected at those time frames that align with those comprehensive plans. What we end up with from doing this is, like Mike said, an inside-out approach, and that yields to that city and village core, and then the more rural and agricultural, less dense surrounding areas as we know it today that align with those comprehensive plans. And then if you aren't familiar with the Licking County Framework Report, in short, it's a strategic approach and proactive effort to managing growth to ensure communities are successfully positioned for the future. That comes directly from how it's described. And our approach holds true to the framework, and the framework was a guiding star for when we developed the coalition facility plan. So talk a little bit more about the actual improvements in those 5, 10, and 20-year horizons. So we see in the 5-year, Johnstown, Alexandria, and Granville are all essentially doubling the size of or plan to double the size of their plant.
Let's talk through real quick what the lines are.
Oh, sorry, you're right.
So, the blue line, what you see here is our expected flow. So with that development coming online in those horizons, kind of evaluating how that would grow over that 20-year horizon so that's based off economic development growth in the region, what we anticipate happening. And then the orange line is our wastewater treatment capacity. Again, this facility plan focuses on the wastewater, sanitary collection, and treatment. So this kind of shows at that same duration how the coalition's looking to bring additional capacity online. And as growth comes, doing the investment, spending the money at the right time, as development goes, that whole pay-as-you-grow mentality is kind of what we wanted to capitalize on. So on the exhibit, and then what Justin will go into is in each of the planning horizons, the 5, 10, and 20, kind of what are the key improvements that we anticipate during those projects. Correct.
And with this, that you're going to talk about the improvements with Johnstown in the 5-year. These were all improvements that were identified back in 2021, Jack, that we needed to increase our sewer. That these weren't because of the coalition, these improvements are necessary for Johnstown to exist.
That is correct.
So
Yeah.
with or without the
2.4
coalition, with or without this, before Intel, we noted that we
Before
needed
Intel, yeah.
improvements.
Now, the only change we made after Intel we were gonna add a 1 million gallon
Yes.
unit. It made sense to
Yeah.
change that to a 2 million gallon.
So I just want people to understand that this upgrade for Johnstown isn't because of the coalition, isn't because of expansion, that, it's because it was necessary in the first place.
Yeah, you were already hitting your capacity of your existing water and wastewater plant. Some changes with the potential economic development. I think the reason the coalition really comes in, and you start looking at the regionalization, interconnect, redundancy. Right now, if your water plant goes down, you don't have a secondary supply of emergency water. So just some of those discussions, when I started 2 years ago with Sean, were things that we were looking at. Hey, do we need to get a connection down to Alexandria so that we can get an emergency water connection? So it's making sure we have safe, reliable, and affordable utilities for the city for the economic growth. So yeah, I'm sure well before we got involved, Jack, you guys were looking at it and you guys were tracking, wet weather flows and when the plant upgrades have happened. So it's natural planning. The difference is that now with the way things have gone over the last 2 years is just making sure you're not just growing just with expansion, but also looking at making sure that you've got that area outside the state limits, that you have a little bit of control with respect to the land use and the planning and the ability to service it. Because as you make these investments, if you don't have that development coming in line with it, affordability starts getting, the stool loses one of its legs. So you got the infrastructure, you got the demand, but now you don't have the revenues on the backside. So being able to align those things and then do it after you guys did your comprehensive plan effort. So now we know what we want the community to grow into, and coordinating close with the school districts, what they want to grow into. Now this is kind of a tool to start implementing that and making sure you're providing those services. And no different than when you start looking at your safety services and how you have to expand that as the community grows. I mean, these are necessary things, and like I said, the coalition just allows us to take a bigger look at it and then leverage some of the capacities and facilities that the other municipalities have.
You're right.
So-
That is a good distinction. Within that 5-year horizon, I mean, regardless of expansion of service area or not, these initial expansions are definitely going to be needed for all 3 communities, and especially for Johnstown. And so, like I said, doubling in the first 5 years, and then get to the 10-year plan, which includes the Johnstown having the ability to expand to 4.8 if needed, if some of that development comes online earlier than expected, or in a more aggressive manner, if needed. And also with a 10-year plan, there's a proposed connection between Alexandria and the Granville systems that will utilize the available capacities that would be in Granville upon the 5-year expansion, so that they'll have additional capacity to serve that. That would allow Granville and St. Albans Township to grow as needed without the need for a costly new plant in that near-term future. Then we go to the 20-year horizon. And this assumes that the planning for a high-level development is going to occur. A new regional plant, anywhere between 3 and 5 million gallons per day, is expected to be constructed that will replace that small plant in Alexandria. And also, it comes with this, there is opportunity for a connection between Johnstown's system and that new plant to take on, kind of similar to what St. Albans and Alexandria would be able to do in that 10-year span. Johnstown would be able to do should capacities, exceed that 4.8 in a high-use scenario, to have that redundancy and attenuation of flow downstream. So that is also an option in that case. I'll say it's going to happen in that time frame, but that is within the plan and is planned for. So again, key components of this plan, this approach, is that it proposes infrastructure that, again, supports the planned growth of the region and focuses on expanding and modernizing the existing infrastructure first before creating new infrastructure and new plants that don't exist today. And it's very flexible. While we do plan for a fully realized development scenario that would fall within these timeframes, the actual need is scalable, and it would be scaled with those actual and planned development needs as they occur, a pay-as-you-grow type scenario. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to you, Mike, and you can talk about costs a little bit.
So again, kind of building on, you saw the timing of improvements, really the other thing we did some cost estimates, start looking at, okay, what are the actual costs that could be absorbed by the coalition as it grows. So over the 5-year horizon, there's $108 million of investment and that includes the expansion of the Johnstown, expansion of the 3 treatment plants, and then there's some sewer work inside those, but that will bring on an additional 5,700 acres to those service areas. Again, that growth on there, under the 10-year, it's coming, there you go. Is an existing 64 million of investment that is taking the Johnstown plant all the way up to 48, or 4.8 MGD. We wish we had 48. 4.8 MGD also includes costs for some of the interconnect between Alexandria and Granville. Now, these costs are for the entire coalition. These aren't exactly all just Johnstown's costs, but it's looking at the coalition as a whole. And as that growth occurs, that potentially opens up an additional 11,000 acres for development within that horizon. Then for the 20-year, kind of shaking our magic 8-ball and looking, we've got another 155 million. Now the main thing there is the new wastewater treatment plant. That would bring on additional 13,000 acres of development within the planning area, the facility planning area. So again, trying to look at those numbers, and we know they're big numbers, but as we look at those, some of those costs were already on the books for these communities. These initial, probably a lot of the initial $108 million were already being planned for those communities or for the coalition. And then as you grow, now it's planning and leveraging that funding, that growth to pay for that next 10-year improvement, that 20-year improvement.
That 10 and 20-year improvement only happens if the growth continues to happen. If the growth
It's a light
doesn't
switch.
happen,
Yeah.
then the improvements don't need to happen.
Correct.
And with that, one of the things that as this growth as the area starts realizing growth, we'll be evaluating, or in conjunction with the city, your capacity and tapping fees. So as the development comes in, they're gonna be paying the fees in theory to pay for what's been invested into, and then also start planning for that future revenue. So those are some of the next steps as you get into this, as development starts occurring, you start expanding, is looking at some of the finances, the rate structures, tapping fees that come into that. But again, you start looking at, if that growth doesn't come, you don't need to do all that expansion. So again, that's where, as Justin mentioned, that we're scalable, we're flexible, we can adapt to what type of development wants to come in. Again, what we're trying to do, we're not trying to grow a project and sell a lot of utility. We're trying to grow the community, right? So you want to grow it the right way in the right locations. That's the whole premise of this inside-out effort from development. So, but yeah, I think the cumulative cost is over a 20-year horizon, upwards of $327 million. But again, that is showing a lot of economic development growth in the region also. Again, we wanted to be conservative on assuming as we looked at those areas that when we brought a 5-year horizon 10, that instead of parsing out saying all 50% of that area is going to develop, we just said let's say the full area developed. Because again, we know, especially in that 5-year horizon, just what we're hearing from the economic development and from potential developments, there's interest out there. So, and if Intel does come off the ground in 2030, you can anticipate that a lot of this follow-up economic development will be coming through the region. Next slide. Okay. So, and you can probably flip through
I
the
think so.
small text here, but I'll kind of talk to you. What this shows is your facility planning area, and then going through what we show as your 20-year horizon for growth in the purplish color.
Supposed to be red, but yeah.
The red, pinkish, salmon. This darker hatched area, this is what the Licking Regional Water identified for the Mooch Run service area. So this is kind of a comparison of what they were looking to service and bring online under their plan versus what the coalition is looking at. So if we looked at the 5-year plan, you were planning $108 million of development to bring about 5,700 acres versus Licking Regional, which was about 200 million for 3,700 acres. So, and of course, theirs is front-loaded because they've got to build the plant and then find the users, right? Secondarily, looking at the 10 years, things come on.
you know, with your additional $64 million for that second level of effort, you know, we're bringing on an additional 11,000 acres for a total of 16,000 acres. Looking at the Licking Regional was about 8,000 acres with a similar cost.
Cumulative.
Yeah. So looking at the cost versus area that could be developed and serviced. And then finally with the 20-year horizon, you know, looking at it's roughly 30,000 is our cumulative additional service area versus the 14,000 acres that Licking Regional was. So under both scenarios, what's interesting is as we're looking at growth in the region, we're both how they're looking at the region and how we're looking at the region, both are bringing about 10 million gallons of development of flow into the system. We just look at it from less dense and focused development. We look at it as a regional mix that's you're gonna still maintain some agriculture, you're gonna still some rural residential. So that's why our areas are larger, our densities are lower, because of how we're looking at your need for development isn't to sell utilities, you're growing a community. You're incorporating green space, you're incorporating parks. So logically, you're gonna spread out and have more area. So some of the key actions from the coalition plan, you know, immediate and long-term costs are less. So again, a lot of the costs that we're talking about today are costs that the communities were already looking to spend. And so it'll give you the flexibility to kind of absorb that first flush of economic development and growth in those regions. The coalition depth, just, you know, as you start comparing apples to oranges, and we're talking with the state of saying, hey, why are we a better option? You know, we're looking at ultimately the ratepayers and the customers out there. You know, I think when we looked at it, it was about $16 million of debt that the coalition collectively carries versus $170 million that Southwest Licking collectively carries. So looking at how that cost structure and our ability, because you have such low debt with the communities within the coalition, you're not a lot more nimble and flexible to make some of these decisions and invest in these improvements. The regional municipal utility system, again, instead of being on an island, Johnstown, you know, we're looking to kind of get that interconnect as you grow. You're at the headwaters of the Raccoon Creek, you know, the only way you're gonna get additional capacity is being able to push water in that 20-year horizon down to that new plant, and ideally by gravity, naturally down towards Alexandria and beyond. Large area to be served as I talked through before, you know, it's a larger area, but it's a more strategic thought about land use, and it's kind of integrated with the framework, with the school district, with the comprehensive plans. Again, it's not what you need to offset costs, it's how you want to grow the community. Reflect land use, again, community level planning. You know, MKSK worked with you guys extensively to kind of come up with a plan for that growth, and really we want to make sure we're working together to implement that. And then fewer discharge points on Raccoon Creek with the coalition as they grow, you know, being that it's an integrated group. We have some flexibility when we start looking at, you know, the whole thing with the 208 and the facility planning is water quality ultimately, right? So you want to do the treatment, you want water quality. So when you start looking at the water quality of Raccoon Creek in the long term, you know, we've got 3 plants that we're operating. You know, sometimes you can work between the 3 of where you make investments to make sure you preserve that water quality, that discharge limit. We know that with the EPA and their water discharge limits, they're not going to get loosened. They're going to get tighter over the years. So making sure we're planning and that flexibility to meet those regulatory requirements, and also minimize those discharge points to the Raccoon Creek. You know, the other thing on the Raccoon Creek side, by handling discharges, we don't speak about it directly in here, but that is also a source for the aquifer and for the water in the region. So, you know, the less discharge points, the more you can control that. You know, the other side of the coin is water distribution, and that kind of, we know the Raccoon Creek directly influences the aquifers in the region. So, again, being good stewards to the environment and the stream discharges is important. I think as the coalition moves forward, it's a united group to kind of monitor that. I'll turn to comparison. So then our summary of takeaways, I'll just go through this real quick. You know, with the coalition plan, we got a municipal-led utility and with regionalization opportunities, follows the natural topography, you know, natural drainage of the area, It's an inside-out approach for development. That's reflective of the community vision that were approved in the land use plans. It's economically viable. I know there's some big numbers, but on the backside, you gotta think about how much land, how much development are the drivers for those investments. And then scales with actual growth, so the ability to scale the growth and you optimize the existing infrastructure that's in place, rather than be dependent on rapid growth for debt recovery. So instead of building something that you've already got a key asset that you can start leveraging for that growth. Let's leverage that, let's build upon that. The result, is that improved jurisdictional boundaries and facility planning. So again, trying to maintain what we've identified as that blue boundary, as an area that the coalition, Johnstown, Alexandria, and Granville, that they've got some control of the growth, some say of how that land use is going to come online as they get service to the sanitary utility. So I think the next slide is just questions, right? So that's a quick summary. I know that the full report's posted on the coalition's website. I don't know if anyone has thumbed through it. It does have a little more detail on the actual improvements for the 5, 10, 25, and ultimate. So you can kind of see what those improvements are the major improvements, the plant improvements, and the major transmission lines. There are other costs that will be developer-led, and some of those costs, even some of those transmission lines that we show that are our costs today, as you work out your deals with development and within the coalition area, you might be offloading some of those costs to developers too. So, but again, we try to include the base of those improvements in that plan. If you want to go through the land use and the growth projections, that's all detailed out there. But again, that's important for us to make sure we're planning for the right amount of discharge of wastewater. I think it was interesting that our number and Licking Regional were about the same number. Because I think when we did our initial stuff, we were still about that 12 to 15 build out capacity. So I think when you start looking at how much growth Western Licking County can absorb, that feels like the right number, both from the wastewater side and then when you start flipping into the water side of what's available for that growth. So I think a lot of that's coming together. The facility plan submitted to the EPA. Our goal is for them to compare that and look at the coalition as a viable option to service that blue boundary that we showed. Again, I think it's important to put our stick in the sand and continue to work with Stephen and the EPA on the merits of this plan. So I guess I'll open up to questions.
Does council have questions for him?
And if you do have a question later, feel free to email, call me. We are here to answer.
PowerPoint be shared,
Certainly.
please.
Definitely.
Thank you. I
Like I
have
said,
some questions after that.
and Jeff, I think if you could look at the coalition, like I said, some of the stuff I would anticipate, looking at the details of where those sewers and what the improvements are, they're spelled out. There's some good exhibits in the overall facility plan, the draft facility plan that we submitted, so,
Okay,
so
thank you.
a lot of detail there.
Yeah.
And if you have any questions, email Sean. Sean texts me, call me all the time, so we'll gladly get a response back to you or explain any of this, so.
Thank you guys so much for your time. Thank you for the thoroughness of this.
No, we appreciate working with you, and it's exciting to kind of see how these pieces fit together, so.
It is.
Really cool.
We're going to move the council committee reports. The Design Review Board was scheduled to meet May 13th. That meeting was canceled. Their next one is May 27th at 5 PM in council chambers. Planning and Zoning jumped on that bandwagon and canceled the 5/13 meeting. Their next one is 5/27 at 6:30. And then Finance decided to do the same thing, canceled theirs. Our next one will be June 17th at 5:30 in council chambers. Facilities Committee is meeting June 3rd at 5 PM in council chambers. And Safety and Service will be meeting June 3rd at 5:30 in council chambers. Any committees I've missed? Okay. Director reports. We received a report from the Chief of Police. Hope everyone has had a chance to review it. Does anyone have questions? If not, I have a couple for them. Good afternoon, Chief Smart. I noticed in April, our calls for service, officer-initiated calls were way down compared to prior months, or the prior month. What was the,
Officer initiated would be due to lack of staffing.
okay. So those calls would have went to other agencies?
the officers, we don't have enough staffing, so
Okay.
they're not initiating anything if we don't have the staffing.
Okay, perfect. And the other question for that is answered, so. Does anyone else have any questions for Chief Smart? Okay. We are hiring a new officer, is that correct?
Yes, there's some additional steps that he has to do to gain a certification in the state of Ohio, but we're taking those steps and moving forward.
Okay, thank you. The other report was from our city manager, Mr. Stannard. Would you like to go over any highlights on your report?
But available for questions if you all have any additional items that you want.
Is there anything you can update us on number 8?
Yeah,
Because I know you typed this up before yesterday, so.
I'll tell you what, out of an abundance of caution, I would like to hold off until
Executive session.
the following executive session just to handle
Okay.
that.
Is that the ULP?
Okay,
Yes.
that's fine. I just wanted to make sure, so. Okay, anybody have any questions for Mr. Stannard? Okay, hearing none, we are moving fast tonight. Table of legislation, there's none. We have one public hearings of legislation. It's Resolution 2025-19, a resolution authorizing the city manager to reappoint the Director of Finance. So I think this was brought up to council a month ago or so. Mr. Delandy, who has been here, 2 years now? Is retiring effective June 30th.
But wait,
Do what?
sorry, but wait, don't.
But wait, he's asking to keep his job. If, Sean, if you'd like to explain this a little bit more?
Certainly, I'll dive into it, and then I'm probably going to hand it over to Dave. He happens to know more about the process, and that's what I'll call this. It's really a process. The mayor pointed out that Dave Delandy is retiring. However, within Ohio, there's a process to rehire, and we are simply following that process. You'll notice the dates are July 1st, 2025, and the retirement is June 30th, 2025. So there will be a retirement and then a rehire. The rehiring of the finance director obviously has to get approval from you all with this particular position. So that is one of the reasons it's before you tonight, putting the steps in place so that this can be executed. Dave, I will let you jump in to go through any of the granular items that I missed.
As far as retirement and rehire, there's two different ways to do it. If you, as far as for the pension and retirement, if I sat out for 2 months, then I would receive my pension effective immediately. To retire and then rehire pretty much with no break, then I will forfeit 2 months of my pension, and then it'll pick up. And that's the rule of Ohio Retirement Board, so,
And this does not cost the city any additional money.
no, it'll continue. The difference is on the Ohio Retirement, the city will still pay the 14% that'll go to Ohio Public Retirement Systems. And then mine, I'll still pay my 10%, but it'll be earmarked into an annuity.
And just to underscore one of the items Dave mentioned, I don't believe we would want him to be gone for 2 months. So that was one of the options, and I think we've elected to not have our finance director removed from a 2-month process. So I appreciate him working with us, and I think it's a win for everybody. Again, it doesn't cost us any additional money, so more process.
Does council have any questions on this resolution?
Mayor, you had said we discussed this, I don't know when, it must have been last meeting, I don't,
No, it was a month.
I don't remember it either, so I'm
No, we,
just.
where did we discuss it?
I think it was Finance Committee.
Finance Committee.
It's in.
I
one
don't
of-
remember
maybe it
any
was- it's-
discussion.
Maybe it was other business. It's in one of the minutes.
It was in the Finance Committee.
It was brought up at some point.
Because I almost had a stroke when I saw it. I was like,
No, it wasn't.
what? He's retired?
I know we discussed it, I just
Yeah,
can't
then I was
remember
like,
where.
okay, wait, could have started with that.
Sorry.
At all of them, so I can't,
I was shocked. but
it's in a
didn't-
set of
didn't really-
minutes somewhere.
It wasn't the last meeting, it was before that. Because when I first heard about it, like Tiffany, about had a heart attack then.
And I let Dave introduce it at that meeting for that
Yeah.
very reason.
It had to be
And
finance.
I cannot remember for the life of me if it was finance or council. And if it was finance, well, it's here now. And shame on finance committee for not divulging this information to the rest of council. There, I'll absolve myself from my details, but it ultimately lands on my lap, so I apologize.
Does council have any other questions on this?
Well, number one of, I mean, the nexus of where this came out of, it kind of came out of the blue. I mean, again, I don't remember hearing about it. If it was in finance, I don't always make it to the finance meetings, so I understand that. With all the executive sessions we seem to have, you'd think it could come up in one of those, especially to talk about an employee and compensation, things like that. When we brought Dave on, there was discussion about that sort of thing, so it would have been nice to kind of talk about that. So I see that he's forfeiting 2 months of pension. We are still paying for retirement, but one of my questions was, have we run into this before? What precedent have we set for handling this?
We have a current employee right now that's retired and rehired.
So I just want to make sure that we're continuing a precedent and how we see this in the future. as
Do we have a
retirements.
protocol or standard operating procedure for that? And if not, maybe that's something we should do.
I mean, we can. It's, my thought on this, because I've thought about this, is nothing changes. We still have the same person. It's just a technical aspect of their own personal life that changes, that they're officially retired, but they're still working. So nothing changes. It's the same employees, same everything. It's just a designation that they, because they hit a certain age or time, is it?
Is it appropriate to discuss this in executive session since we're talking about employment of a city employee rather than discussing it publicly? That's my first question.
Well, it's a resolution if we want to reappoint them, so.
Yep, but there may be questions that would be appropriate to discuss in executive session rather than publicly, is what I'm asking.
We have
Plenty of
Mr.
time to
Delaney.
table it.
Mr. Delaney?
Yeah, the higher, public retirement does not require for me to get this done. I think it's just because of my position with the city, the finance director, how it's appointed, or you approve, have Sean do the hiring. As far as any other employee could do this without,
It would
Having
never even
any-
be brought to us.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's
only
only,
be brought
it's only
to-
in our purview because of our hiring practice of the
With the-
finance director. That's it. The function of the retirement rehire thing is,
If Teresa or the
not-
chief did it, we would never hear
the
about it.
state has no, or the
Correct.
council has no say.
It was brought up in the March 18th Finance Committee minutes.
What'd you say about the chief?
That's if the chief or Teresa did this, it wouldn't come to us for a vote.
I'm not that far along, so I don't know that answer.
I think if you want to talk about the person individually, then yes, I would reserve that for executive session. And that's probably an additional item, I would say, rather than this one I view as more of a process piece. But certainly, we can have further discussion in executive session. And if you feel that that's appropriate, we can certainly table this so that those questions can be answered. Again, more of a process piece, and I think somebody asked the question of precedent being set. Case-by-case scenario, I think with each individual situation of how it's handled. Sometimes it works for the city one way, sometimes it works for the employee the others. Probably finding a middle ground in there. So each scenario may be.
Can we add to our executive session tonight so we can get it out of the way so that whomever council members maybe want to.
It falls under the council session for tonight, so it's
Yep.
fine.
Yeah,
We could do it there, that way we can get it done and out of the way and we don't have to necessarily table it.
for sure. Or you could,
We'd have to
It
table it
hasn't
right
been-
now and then
Take action.
take action right after the executive session.
I would like to do that so we don't have the embarrassment of trying to, if council wanted to ask some questions that would be more appropriate in an executive session rather than out here about an individual or.
You have to make a motion to table it.
Is that a
I'd
motion?
like to make a motion to table this item.
Very good.
Do I need to say anything else?
No.
Okay.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Jeff Barr,
Yes.
Bob Orsini,
Yes.
Dave Seeland.
Yes.
Brian Green,
Yes.
Tiffany Hollis.
Yes.
Mayor Barnard,
Yes.
Wes Coble.
Yes.
Okay. There's no other introduction of legislation, other business. I have a couple items. I've given you all the Licking County Jail Ministries Jail and Bail fundraiser. If you could let me know if you were interested in doing that, so I can contact Licking County and let them know who all from our entity will be participating. This is a fundraiser for the jail ministries, so it's a good organization. I believe it's Scott Hayes that's organizing this. One of the other things that I'd like to bring up to see if council's interested, it can be one of us, all of us, 2 of us, 5 of us, however we want to do it. I would like to do a state of the city on our finance, invite the community to come listen. We can go over our finances. There's a lot of misconceptions, how money's spent, where money goes. I think this would be a great time for us to hold a session and just go over everything financial and answer anybody's questions. What are your thoughts on doing that?
Agreed, I'd be there. I'm fine with that.
Okay, I will get with Dave Delaney to start organizing that, put together a packet and where and how it'll take place. So
We have a tentative date, timeframe.
I would like June or July. The sooner the better.
And it's only going to focus on
Finances,
finance? You
on
don't-
general fund.
You don't want to make it a focus of finance and a state of the city address?
We can do that. Whatever you guys want to do. I was just trying to take the,
I mean, I think you should call it a state of the city address. You can maybe have some other bullet points,
okay.
you know, and if the focus is on finance, that's cool, but maybe there's some other things that we would want to include, or we should include.
Okay. You guys good with that?
Because if we all attend, it's a meeting and you can't go off agenda, correct? Or is it,
Well,
As long as, it's-
We wouldn't be conducting any business. It's just,
I think as long as it's a meeting, so you have a pretty broad brushstroke of what you discussed, obviously, in the open. It's only when you go to an executive session where it has to be specific to a topic that is covered under the
Okay.
Ohio Open Meeting Act. So,
I will start preparing something, get with Ms. Hollis. So we'll start organizing something, getting everything to you guys, see what you guys think, if you want to add, delete, at least start coming up with a framework for it. If you guys are good with it?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
If I could suggest that we have defined times
Yes.
to discuss different topics, because my fear is that a motivated individual could derail the entire night, evening and drag it into the wee hours of the night, which would limit our ability to communicate to the public at large. So if we could define, we're gonna talk about X, Y, doesn't matter what it is, for a certain amount of time. When we exceed that time, we're gonna have to circle back on this, because I wanna make sure that we project and discuss as much information possible with the public versus the potential of a functional filibuster to drive us to 9 o'clock and empty the room out.
Yes. Nope.
but this would be a presentation that we're dictating?
Yes.
Right? We're not, it's not Q and A.
Right.
It's, here's the
Oh,
presentation.
disregard.
I mean, we could do some questions at the end, but we would do our report first.
Withdraw my request.
The last thing, and this is more work for Teresa and me and whoever else wants to get involved in it. In an attempt to honor our history of the city and the stewards that have worked for the city, I have been thinking about that we start doing some proclamations through the rest of the year to honor all the living past mayors and do a proclamation for them. I know there's some that are older and sick. And I would just like to recognize them for the work they did. Wanted to find your guys' thoughts on that.
Sure. I mean, by charter, each one of us could make a proclamation for whatever. There's no restrictions.
I just wanna make sure you guys were
appreciate
good with it, so.
asking and sharing, but sure.
Okay. I've asked a couple individuals in the city who have a lot of history to start getting the names of all the living former mayors. They're doing the research on that, so. Does anyone else have anything for other business?
I do, I got a couple things. Fiesta Del Rio, tomorrow, Big Red Band fundraiser. So from 3 to 9 p.m. Some of the proceeds go from Fiesta Del Rio orders to the Big Red Band, so good fundraiser there. Memorial Day, May 26th, 11:30, at Green Hill Cemetery. The Legion's doing their Memorial Day service with a cookout at the Legion to follow. But again, it's a very good community event there, moving from Green Hill over to the Legion. And then kind of echoing one of the sentiments out there, JYA, shout out to Travis Dowell's Trucking, handled a lot of the issues out in the parking lot.
and they handled a great tournament this weekend. So shout out to all the volunteers, but also the teams as well. That's all I got this week.
All right, I have, first I wanted to say thank you, to all the first responders, everybody. As you probably all know, we had a fire in the community, 2 weeks ago. How time flies, right down the street from me, but I wanted to thank everybody that was involved, first responder wise. I can assure you, it was a quick call and response. Everybody made it. They were there to the wee hours of the morning, very thorough. I want to thank everybody for that. Also the community that stepped up really big. There were a number of fundraisers and different people reaching out to see how they could help. It was an amazing effort, and this community always steps up big in situations like that. So I wanted to thank the community individually. My wife was involved, a couple of the neighbors, Angels Persist, the Legion has been involved, others. I saw there was a GoFundMe online, so really can't thank the community enough, and hope they'll continue to reach out to the family and support them in their time of need. And on a lighter note, we have Spring Fest coming up June 7th, 5 to 9 on the square.
Ms. Hollis?
I don't. When's the first farmer's market?
June 4th. It'll be 1 in June, 2 in July, 2 in August, 2 in September, and 1 in October. Those will be starting soon. For you, Mr. Barr?
I wanted to thank the Johnstown Monroe School educators for another year as it winds down in the sense of what they do for our community and educating our children. Each and every one of them, from staff, faculty, and administrators, do an excellent job, in my opinion. As a proud graduate of a Johnstown High School class of '88, I appreciate all they do, especially specifically with my kid. So thanks to all the educators in our school system.
Awesome. Mr. Orsini? No, sir. And we have a new pope, and it's not an Orsini this time?
No, there's never been one. They all changed their name, Donnie, you know. In 3.
Mr. Stern?
One item, going to put Jack on the spot a little bit, but he has all the information he needs in order to answer this. So some good news relative to some of the roadway improvement projects that we had originally slated. Jack was able to coordinate and connect with some of the paving crews that were looking to do some of that work. And obviously, we estimate conservatively whenever we're putting together our budgets. And this year, we lucked out a little bit and came in under. So with that, I'm going to allow Jack, if you feel, I don't want to put you too much on the spot.
No.
You know all of it.
When we thought we were gonna have to remove Liberty Street because we did a lot more hatch repair, particularly in Central Station area, we thought we might have to not have Liberty Street milled and filled. But I talked with the different paving companies and was able to get a number where we're gonna be able to get Liberty Street and McCracken paved at just slightly under what we were just estimating McCracken to do. Now, it's gonna have to be a one-day thing. It's a long day. They're coming in, milling everything, so it'll be a long day for the residents on those 2 streets, but we will get those 2 roads completed at a price that's within our budget.
Well done.
Excellent. We appreciate that, for sure.
So Jack, you can come tell me good news like that anytime, so
So
appreciative of your efforts.
I'm going to bring up, or I'm going to have Tiffany bring up a subject so Sean can answer it, so it's on the record,
Oh, gosh.
so that,
Am I gonna
She
get,
doesn't look confident either, Donnie.
you want me to say it, or you want to?
I love pink houses.
So if anyone's noticed, there is a pink house now on Main Street. This house, based on our regulations, we cannot stop the house from being painted pink because it is not changing the material, correct, Mr. Stern?
oh man, put me on the spot. I did have a document over there and I highlighted it, but I left it in my office, so I will try to go from memory as best as possible without boring you all to death. So in our section 1187, Design Review Ordinance COA section, There are two different distinctions between major and minor. Major improvements have to go through the design review board for approval. A minor does not need to go through the approval process from a board perspective, but rather internally. So change of material is typically the key driver with a major improvement. This particular situation was aluminum that had a coating on it, probably a painted coating, so it falls into the minor category. In the minor category, I've looked through some of the provisions that, as the city manager, I have to evaluate, and again, I don't see anything in there that prevents or gives me the authorization to prevent from individual doing a different color. Now, I will speak to the future, hopefully, with the new rewrite of the design regulations. They'll have a palette of colors, and I'm not saying that this pink is going to turn out to be terrible, but I think.
Tiffany's a fan of the pink.
Yeah. Hey,
Tiffany
listen,
loved it.
And
every time I leave my driveway, I'm gonna sing John Cougar Mellencamp in my head, so like I'm all about
Well,
it.
Seeing as I was
Can't be
painted
mad.
today,
Yeah.
there's a good chance it may not be there. in
right,
6 months.
so with that, we had a pink house on North Main, and it was done very well, and I think in
Like
that.
legendary.
That was a tastefully done pink house. So depending on how this turns out, it could be a product that is in one person's view very acceptable, but I'm certain in another person's view, maybe something that's viewed differently. So right now, we don't have guardrails to kind of delineate that. But again,
If it was aluminum siding that was already had a material on it and you paint it pink, that would not be allowed because you're changing the material. If it was brick and you were painting it, that would not be allowed. But since it was already painted and you're putting paint on top of it, it's allowed.
correct. If it was brick, that's putting a different material on top of it, so that's a change of material. If it's vinyl, you're putting another product on top of it, so that's a different material. But because obviously the aluminum siding had a coating on it of paint of some sort, it's the same material. So we try to follow the letter of the law as best we can. That's the direction that you all, obviously, through the ordinance, give to staff. So we try to uphold those as best as possible. So if you like the pink house, great. If you don't, that's okay too. But just so you know, I can't wave a magic wand, and if you like it, allow it, or don't like it, not allow it. So I have to follow the guidelines given to me.
Anybody else? Okay. I make a motion that we move to executive session to consider the appointment, employment, or compensation of a public employee and discuss collective bargaining matters to include all of council and the city manager and our wonderful attorney who's here, with no
Maybe.
Well, there may be action.
maybe action to follow on resolution 2025-19. Second.
Is that Dave Seeland?
Yep.
Mayor Barnard,
Yes.
Wes Coble,
Yes.
Jeff Barr,
Yes.
Bob Orsini.
Yes.
Dave Seeland.
Yes.
Brian Green.
Yes.
Stephanie Hollis.
Yes.
Thank you guys for coming tonight.